Keiko is on Bajor for 2 more weeks. Jake has babysat Ensign Pran's hatchlings a couple of times and made sure their little wings didn't get tangled. And Quark's antimonium options and quadro-triticale futures and powdered newt supplements are all wiped out. Hey, everybody, welcome to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hey, very good job, Ryan, for getting through that tongue twister right there.
Excellent.
We're joined by a very special guest, the most special of all guests, Mr. ARMIN SHIMERMAN. Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, but I didn't do it as well as ARMIN did it. The quadro-triticale futures. I actually had to rewind that a few times. I was like, if I'm going to say that, I got to make sure I say it the way ARMIN said it.
Well, probably ARMIN didn't say it the way the writers wanted it either. I probably just said it the way I wanted to say it, and it came out the way it did.
The fact that you remembered it and got the words out was amazing to me, because as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, God, that's so hard for somebody to say. There's nobody that knows what it is, but I had to write it down too. Antimonium options, quadro-triticale futures, and powdered newt supplements. I was like, how the hell is he going to get to these lines? And I was surprised.
We don't know how many takes it took for me to say it. We don't know how many takes it took. It could have taken 25. We don't know. I do know that one of the blessings of being on Deep Space Nine was that I usually did not have to have any technobabble. They left that to Cullum and Max and some of the others. But
Sadig, yeah.
But I didn't. Sadig, absolutely. But I didn't have to do that. So if I have to do it once in 7 years, not so bad.
Yeah, not so bad. You nailed it. You nailed it. It definitely. I was like, I know he doesn't know what this is, because there's nobody that knows what this stuff is. You're talking about things that it's very difficult to talk about something you have no concept of what it is. You just know it's something, right?
Well, actually, the powdered newt supplement I could get at any gym. So for your pre-workouts. By the way, very quickly,
1 out of 3.
Yeah, very quickly. This is Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 18, Business as Usual, written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, directed by Alexander Siddig. What a deal. This is April 7th, 1997. I should have thrown that at the top, but we got so excited. And thank you for joining us, ARMIN. This is going to be a great time. So we don't know how well you remember this, almost 25 years later. But first of all, do you remember anything about Sid as a director?
He was always very gentle. I can't say specifically for this episode, but I remember other episodes that he directed, at least one. He was always very gentle, kind, considerate. There was always a sense of it was an on-job learning as you went sort of feeling from Sid. So we had to be gentle with him because he was learning as we were shooting. I think we had so many actors who became directors that it was always sort of a babysitting sort of situation for us. But the trick was to remember that he was going to be one of us the next week, and therefore we couldn't get too riled up about it.
And speaking of babysitting, Cirroc, as you know, you babysat Ensign Pran's hatchlings a couple times and made sure their little wings didn't get tangled. So that was a fun line for you there.
Yeah, and we had baby.
Uh-oh.
It was fun to see him in those little outfits, looking really cute. But I wanted to go back a little bit to ARMIN, your storyline in this episode. We had heard you speak a lot about cousin
Gala.
Gala?
Yeah, we heard you speak a lot about him, and finally we get to see this cousin Gala, played by Josh Pius.
Mm-hmm.
But I was excited to see this combination because I felt like this was somebody that was more successful than you, if that makes any sense.
It doesn't, but there were some Ferengi that were more successful than
Yeah, Cirroc, I kind of had the same thought.
Because you always mention like my cousin Gala Yeah,
He had several moons. Yes, he had several moons that I was in.
He always bragged about several moons. Right. Right.
Cirroc, you're breaking up a little bit on us. I don't know if you need to close an app or
let me log out and I'll log right back in.
All right. And I'll just say real quick that I was thinking the same thing when I saw Cousin Gala, since it was the first time we'd seen him, but we'd mentioned him a bunch of times in previous episodes. He had a lot of NAMs, what we call NAMs, non-appearance mentions, because we believe that, you know, the regulars are credited. But there are a lot of people that they're mentioned in an episode, but they didn't get paid that week, but their character was mentioned, and we feel like they should get some kind of credit or some kind of notation that says, hey, this character's story was furthered, was continued, was enriched, even if the actor wasn't paid that week to play the character. And Cousin Gala had, I'm looking right now, we see you, Cirroc. We're talking about Cousin Gala. He had 6 NAMs already. So he was one of these characters that we heard about a bunch of times before we actually even see him. 6 times. So finally, the 7th time he actually appeared. And my first thought when he popped on was kind of the first thing you said, Cirroc, was who is the actor playing him? Because I was like really interested. And I also noticed he played it seemingly a lot like Jeff Combs plays Brunt. That was my impression when I first saw him acting.
Well, I don't know what inspired him. I do know that for the Ferengi on the Next Generation, whenever they were cast, they were sent some of my videos from the original Ferengi episode on Next Generation to say this is what a Ferengi is. Now, he may have seen that, and my performance in TNG is closer to Jeff's than it is to mine later on in Deep Space Nine. But so maybe he was affected by that, or maybe he was aware of the show and was indeed trying to emulate Jeff's performance, which is a different type of Ferengi, a much more aggressive, acquisitive sort of Ferengi than even I was, and certainly nothing like than Rom and Nog.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and as you've mentioned before, you're much prouder of your acting as far as Quark is concerned than your portrayal, I should say, of the original Ferengi. So you'd probably rather them watch Quark as a training video than you know, Next Generation Ferengi, which were, I feel like it seemed like, I don't know whose decisions they were, the writers or the directors, they kind of did the Ferengi a little bit of a disservice, making them so one-dimensional and aggressive and not giving them the depth that you and Max and Aron ended up giving them later on.
Well, of course, hindsight is 20/20. So what all of us did, you know, influenced writers over the course of many years. The original Ferengi, as I understood it, as it was explained to me, which I didn't do, which is why I've apologized for that performance ad infinitum. They were supposed to be Yankee Clipper captains. That's what I was told. That they were supposed to be hard-dealing, no-nonsense, people from Maine sort of people who were only interested in commerce. Unfortunately, as I've said many times, they hired me and I fucked it up royally. They were supposed to be the new Klingons, actually, on TNG. They were supposed to be that. There was no sense of them being comic. There was no sense of them being rather oafish. I did that, and much to my chagrin and shame. So one can understand why the early performances of the Ferengi are so one-dimensional, because my performance was one-dimensional, and I won't take all the blame. I'll take 95% of the blame. But the director of that first episode, whose name I've forgotten, probably Freudian that I have, is because he pushed that one-dimensionality as opposed to asking for a three-dimensional performance.
Interesting.
But he only has 5% of the blame. I carry the other 95%.
Well, Cirroc, we see you in here. You fine, by the way, just in case you're wondering. You're back with the vengeance.
Yeah, no, I was just listening to. I can hear you guys on my end, and Armin, I like the answer you gave about, you're defining this Ferengi character, and one of the things that appeals to me about Quark is that he is more dynamic, and there are other things that can move him, his emotional needle, besides just money. And in some cases, you actually take these different moral uh, directions that define you as somebody who's compassionate or caring or capable of loving. So there's so many layers to who Quark is, and I think that this episode in particular, shows that kind of depth to Quark, because he's not just motivated by the finances. You can't buy him out with the money. You're offered in this episode, 10 million bars of platinum or whatever it was. And the temptation of that doesn't override you making what you consider to be the right decision, which is saving lives.
Right. There are two principles at work there for a Ferengi. One is the commerce, which we're all familiar with, but always in the background. And the writers gave me a number of times to express this. They're also nonviolent. There's a great speech they've given me a great speech in another episode that I had to Sisko about the fact that they're not killers. They don't kill other people. They don't kill other Ferengi. They are nonviolent. And so here he's caught between two ethos, and good for Quark for choosing the right one. Thank you, Cirroc. But it was, we all know, Cirroc, you and I and Ryan and everyone else, that you can only say words that are given you on the page, and you can only express those feelings if you're given the opportunity by the dialogue that you have on the page.
Yeah, no, the writers have a grasp of what they want to do and the kind of stories they want to tell, and clearly they're not just flat one-dimensional characters. They want to show everybody in kind of a layered way, so that you don't know which way they might go. They might lean this way, they might lean that way. You're not really sure, and that uncertainty what makes the storytelling so good. Because I'm not sure what Quark is going to do next. He might sell everybody out, or he might do the right thing and save lives.
And we can say the same thing about Jake as well. We're not sure which way Jake's going to go. Is he going to be a dutiful son? Is he going to be rebellious? Mm-hmm. Is he going to side with his father, or is he going to side with his friend Nog? We don't know. And as you say, and I want to second this, that's good writing.
It's good writing.
There's a lot of good writing in this episode. There were also a lot of aliens mentioned and aliens brought up and names and all these things where I'm just like, oh, they're doing extra homework today with all this stuff. One character, and a great cast of new characters or one episode characters, including Gala. I also want to talk about Haggith, who is I guess that's how a Spaniard would pronounce sheep's bladder. Am I right? No, nobody. Don't the Scottish people eat haggis, which is like sheep's
haggis? Yes, they eat haggis, which is bladder. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Spaniards, especially Barcelonans, have let's move on. So somebody got that joke. Somebody somewhere. I'm not saying they liked it, but they got it. So Haggith was this very interesting character the moment he walks on, because he had such not just an accent, but a fashion of speech that was very interesting and deliberate. And I found myself wondering, is that really the way the actor speaks, or was he putting on extra emphasis on different words and fashions of speech? And Armin, could you shine a little light on that for us?
Sure. So the actor was Steven Berkoff, who is a very famous playwright and even more famous director both in the United States and in England. So the way he spoke is the way he speaks. Language is very important to Mr. Burkhoff. So he's very careful about the words he uses. And he wears his emotions on his sleeve. You always know where Burkhoff is. But he's very careful about the word choices. So that what you just mentioned is a idiosyncrasy. I believe that's the right way to say that. Of Mr. Burkhoff's. He is, and again, he's a playwright. So again, he's a wordsmith. So the way he says words, he appreciates words perhaps a little bit more than most, because not only as an actor does he get to say the words, but as a writer, he has to choose which words are going to be in his script as well.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of interesting things with classical material. For instance, he wrote a play about Ophelia from Hamlet. He also wrote a play about the Greeks, which is called The Greeks. They're wonderful, wonderful plays, very linguistic, very word-centric. So again, he's very careful about the words he uses.
And you were saying before we were recording that you played a secondary role as kind of a peacemaker or kind of a buffer on the episode during filming. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I usually don't want to denigrate any of the actors I worked with, and I'm not going to denigrate Steven Burkhoff because he is an incredible talent. But he has a hair-triggered temper, which I was aware of before working with him. His reputation preceded him. And he was less than happy that week that we were shooting. I don't remember the specifics, but everything seemed to not be going his way. But he is, forgive me, Mr. Burkhoff, but he is a little bit of a diva. And we didn't have a lot of divas on our show. So I was quite concerned that he was going to cause problems in our shooting schedule if he refused to come out of his trailer or that sort of thing. So I spent the week babysitting him, making sure that I calmed his nerves, explained everything to him, reassured him that it was all going to be fine, ran the lines with him so that he was comfortable about that. And when the week was over, I sighed a sigh of relief that my babysitting chores were over. But not until the last day was I ever sure that there wasn't going to be a blow-up.
Sounds stressful.
It was, but it was also one of the best episodes that I got as Quark, and I was doing everything I could to make it as good as possible. And I didn't want any bumps in the road to foul up what I consider to be one of the better scripts for Quark.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about Mr. Burkhoff, because in some ways, the quote-unquote diva side of him played well into this character.
Yeah.
And the role he had to play as this international or intergalactic arms dealer who basically gets his way or you suffer. So I feel like a lot of that actually was poured into the performance of this character and played well on screen for the two of you going heads up in this chess match of wit and learning each other's weaknesses and strengths.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to put it. He is a very charismatic actor. Every time you see him on screen or on stage especially, he eats up the whole space. He's a huge personality. So the casting department and the producers and the director, Sid, did a very good job of casting him. And he didn't blow up. So they got the best of him without the worst of him. But certainly good casting, because those qualities were needed for that character. And he did that. And I must say, I was a little bit selfish. The more I got to know him off camera, the more I could use that on camera.
Interesting. Yeah, he just had such an interesting way of delivering lines that it's really interesting to hear that he was kind of that interesting, enigmatic kind of character off camera as well. And yeah, that's good job, Sid, right? He nailed it.
Yeah, good job, Sid, because probably Sid had to handle him as much as I did. I spent a lot of time with him, but Sid had to work with him in front of the camera. He's a wonderful performer, and we've all learned that sometimes wonderful performers have massive egos, which makes them wonderful performers.
Right.
And you have to take one with the other. If you want the talent, you have to take the ego as well. And he was very talented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely fit the role in this particular episode. There was a moment in this episode as well where Sisko really goes heads up with you in the office, where he basically says, "This is how it's going to be, and that's it." And he's pretty tough. And I like the moment because, you know, part of you thinks you're going to get away with everything you want to do. You're like, technically, I didn't do anything. They were holograms. I didn't sell any guns. What guns? You know, I didn't. You don't have any proof of anything. And Sisko says something like, "Well, if you so much as litter on the promenade,
yeah,
I'm going to be on your ass," or something to that effect. And I love the back and forth with you, because here you are. He knows what you've done. You know what you've done, but you've done it in such a smart way that there's really no evidence of it. You can't really catch me red-handed with anything. So just another like cat and mouse game that I think you play well with not only Sisko but with Rene Auberginois as Odo. Just I love watching you. I love watching you do your thing, Armin. It's just,
well, thank you. It's credit to the writers. As far as Quark dealing with authority, they had to walk a very fine tightrope, because on the one hand, you have a character who runs a bar who is a series regular and has to reoccur in most of, if not all of the episodes. You have another series regular, a whole bunch of series regulars who are authoritarian figures who can't be made to look stupid by this one character getting away with murder for 7 years. So they have to walk a fine line of keeping me as devious as they could without besmirching the intelligence of the other characters. And I believe, for the most part, although this was indeed, as you say, a wonderful scene, but it wasn't often that I got to work with Avery. And it may be because of this dilemma, that if there were a lot of scenes, there would be lots of opportunities for one of the two of us to look stupid. And God forbid that Sisko should look stupid, and thankfully, God forbid that Quark didn't get to look stupid that often either. So this cat and mouse, as you put it, Cirroc, is exactly the game they had to play in order to make both characters viable for an audience.
Very interesting. So we've got to jump to a very quick break right now, but I want to talk about that a little bit more because this is really good stuff. So everybody stick around. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Armin Shimerman. My name is Ryan T. Husk. We're doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 5, Episode 18, Business as Usual. Here are the Trivioids that may or may not have made the cutting room floor very quickly. Jadzia Dax risks 8 strips with a purchase at 6 and a sale of 10. Quark's, oh, great, here we go. Antimonium options, Quadra Triticale futures, and powdered newt supplements are all wiped out. Keiko is on Bajor for 2 more weeks. Jake has babysat Ensign Pran's hatchlings a couple of times, made sure their little wings did not get tangled. Gala and Haggith sold 150,000 rifles to the Mankovites, and then they sold 100,000 to the other side, which is terribly devious and profitable. Chief O'Brien holds Kiriyoshi in one arm while he plays darts with the other. Quark orders a double snail juice, extra smooth. And is Kiriyoshi O'Brien just a sad baby? So, Armin, you're telling us about that is an interesting dilemma where if your job is to, in a way, outsmart or outwit or fool people in general, putting you in scenes with these, intelligent and competent officers is kind of a dangerous thing, and you do have to walk a tightrope. I personally, from a fan's point of view, I think the way they achieved this was by making Quark, played by Armin, by making you such a brilliant character that was so devious and so intelligent that if and when he did outsmart, say, Odo or Sisko or outwit Dax or something, it was understandable because, well, Quark is incredibly intelligent and sneaky and connected. So it didn't really look bad on the officers. They had to make your character, and you had to play the character as brilliantly devious.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that he was always brilliant. On the number of occasions that I took the writers out for lunch, I would always say, my primary question, the number one question I have for you guys, I want you to answer this for me. They never did. Just tell me, what is Quark's IQ? Just tell me.
I knew you were going to say
because some episodes I'm quite brilliant, and some episodes I'm as dumb as a rock. Just tell me what the IQ of the character is. They never were able to do that for me. And it just depended on which episode I was in. Yes, in order to be a good negotiator, sometimes you have to be a little devious. It was the ethos of my people being deceiving and getting a good deal was a moral imperative for the Ferengi. So I was following my moral imperative.
Yeah, and to add to that, Armin, I would say that Quark was really good at leveraging his position. So wherever he saw that, he was needed for whatever purpose, he would reveal that and make that be known. Like, you need me for this purpose. Therefore, I have a pass to get away with whatever I have, what I'm going to do right now.
Right. What do I get in return for that? Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It's because everybody eventually ended up in Quarks. Everybody eventually. You ended up in Quarks. Sisko ended up in Quarks. Everybody eventually. So a lot of things were spoken, and we have very good hearing because of those ears. The irony, of course, was all the actors playing the Ferengi were deaf because of those ears. But so things were said and heard and transpired at Quarks, and we were very good at vacuuming up information and selling it to the highest bidder.
Now, I have a question. When I was watching this episode, there is something that you do as a greeting or a hello, goodbye gesture that I had never seen before. And it's like when you get your handcuffs, when your hands are cuffed in front of you. That's how the brothers know.
I know. I'm like, leave it to Cirroc to say that.
So I was saying, when did that happen? Because I didn't see that before. It
had happened before. I didn't use it very often. It had happened before. I hadn't used it that many times. I did. I think the first time if I remember correctly, the first time I used it, I was, what do you call those things between the station and the ships, the little airlock. I was in the airlock and somebody had locked me in and I was pleading for my life, and I think I did that for the first time. I tried to do little things like that every now and then in the show to make it different than humans. To say this is what this species does. For a while I did that as well, 2 for 1.
I didn't see that.
But yeah, there were a number of those. I tried to do that in order to. Yeah, I came up with them. They were my choices. They're not in the script anywhere. No.
Interesting. You're creating culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was creating culture. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Just the way, like Leonard Nimoy, when he first did this, right, or the Vulcan neck pinch, he was creating more Vulcan culture. You were creating Ferengi culture. That's really interesting. I didn't know you came up with this.
Yeah, I did that. There's a scream also that other actors emulated that I came up with. There's humans pretty much became a signature from sort of way for me to say that. I was always looking for ways to come up with culture. That's a good way to put it, Ryan. And those are the ones that made it into the last edit.
It really differentiates the Ferengi from humans and other aliens, and that's really important. So that way, these are the kind of things that stick to fans too. Is all the little inside jokes about which aliens do which things and all that. We love that kind of stuff. So you really enriched the culture for us. That's really cool.
And occasionally, I mean, the writers came up with umox, so that's a cultural thing as well. And but on occasion, I would use that. I would just do that, and as though really. I love this deal.
You love it, huh?
But I think aside from the umox and the rules of acquisition, of course, which the writers came up with, the personal gestures are all mine. That I came up. I think there's one in Little Green Men that both Max and I came up with together. But yeah.
What was that?
It had to do with the universal translator not working, and we came up with some language that was supposed to be Ferengi. It's the only episode that has a tiny bit of Ferengi language in it, and we just made it up on the spot. But we were talking to each other in Ferengi, and they had failed to give us any words for that, so we just did that.
Really, you had to wing it?
Yeah. But we both have been Ferengi for a long time. It wasn't that hard. And of course, Aron was there to help as well, so it made it much easier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If anybody knows Ferengi, it would be the three of y'all. I mean, who else?
I think so.
Who else knows more than you guys? But yeah, I do want to talk about one of the topics that I thought was brought up in this, and this is how DS9 picks a topic that is really universal and timeless. And this particular topic is the selling of weapons to both sides of the aisle, right? To the opposing forces. And it's something that continues to this day. We talk about weapons trade, the weapons business. It's something that is very relevant as far as, the ongoing wars that we've seen around the world, the amount of weapons that get flooded in, how the cartels are armed, and where do they get their weapons from. So the idea of selling weapons and the idea of what they're going to be used for are really heavily touched upon in this episode. I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that was.
I was very excited about that when I read the episode, because I agree with you. It is a situation that is everlasting and is horrible, horrendous. Shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen at all. And I know that our government, the United States government, has participated in this quite a bit, where they arm both sides. And there's something wrong, morally wrong about that. And I'm glad, as I said, that they gave my character an episode like that to talk about this. But this is the great thing, as you pointed out, Cirroc, about Star Trek. It doesn't give you answers for cultural dilemmas. It just poses the question and lets you decide after the episode is over, so that you can talk about it with your family and come up with your own opinions. So, yeah, this was great. I mean, our show, like many Star Trek shows, touched on a lot of cultural dilemmas that are impossible to solve, but need to be talked about.
Mm-hmm. And
Absolutely.
you also mentioned, Armin, that you were happy the writers gave you this kind of episode, and it seems like fairly consistently, I mean, out of 170 episodes, you're going to get a few for sure, but they made sure to write episodes that remind us, hey, Quark is a multi-dimensional character. He's not just this kind of one-trick pony. I mean, you had that peppered into every scene and every bit of dialogue that you had, but you also had entire episodes that showed, like when you got married to Grilka, or like this one, where there's a reason we're rooting for you as a character, is because you do the morally right thing, even if you end up hating yourself for it, jokingly or not. But when you would receive those episodes, when you would receive the script, would your eyes light up? Would you get just excited?
Like a Christmas tree, Ryan. Like a Christmas tree. When I got those scripts, Grilka's one, this one, there's a Jem'Hadar where I had that speech to, or the siege of, I can't remember the numbers, the siege of 947 or whatever.
AR-71 or something.
Yeah, something like that. When those scripts showed up, it was Christmas for me, because not only was I getting to play my character, but I was getting to say something with my character that I thought, God bless the writers for allowing me to do this. I call those my Spock sort of moments, or my Spock scripts, because in both instances, it's an alien sort of lecturing the humans about what they don't do perfectly, that they don't do right, which is what Spock always did with Kirk, and occasionally I got to say to other characters on the show. But this episode was certainly one of them. I was very proud of this episode. I'm very proud of the way it turned out. And it just gave me an opportunity to be, I don't want to use the word heroic, but moral, to be moral, and in a human sort of way.
Right.
And that was delicious.
Mm.
And, I couldn't help but think as I was watching the episode, your line was prions or a mutagenic retrovirus.
Yeah.
Say it with a lot of teeth.
Yeah. And they were basically talking about a virus, releasing a virus. And I couldn't help but, as I'm watching this, saying, wow, here we are going through a pandemic, dealing with a virus that's taking lives. And here your character is faced with the dilemma of supplying this same kind of deadly virus to a million people. And as I'm watching this, I'm saying, boy, these writers, if they didn't hit the nail on the head, I'm literally in the middle of a pandemic watching an episode about a virus. And so they are current. They stay current even all these years later.
And not only current, but prescient. They seem to know what the future was going to be about. It isn't this episode, but there's another episode, maybe you guys can help me, about quarantine a whole section of San Francisco for the homeless. Yes, I remember when that episode aired, no more than 2 weeks later, after the episode aired, San Francisco quarantined the homeless. Not because of the episode, it was just coincidental. But
really,
that's what I'm saying. They were prescient. They somehow they were able to look into a crystal ball and see the future and write about it.
Cirroc and I talk about that over and over again, don't we, Cirroc? How sometimes it was right after the episode aired. Sometimes the episode is almost more relevant, and sometimes more relevant today than it was in 1995 somehow. And that happens very consistently with Deep Space Nine, especially.
Yeah, whoever was responsible, kudos to them. It's probably a whole group of people, but kudos to all of them. And that's why I think the popularity of Deep Space Nine is what it is today, because it wasn't about boldly saving a planet every week. It was about discussing the human condition and things that may arise in the human condition. And those, as Cirroc said earlier, are all universal. Those are universal. And unfortunately, they recur. They're cyclical. They come back. Plagues, this isn't the only plague that's ever hit humanity. We've had lots of plagues over the course of centuries. So, again, cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cyclical. And a lot of the topics being presented to us in this science fiction way allows us to see it outside of whatever preconceived notions we have of the world. We get to see it in this abstract form with these aliens over there. And it allows us to kind of digest this same information that we're living through in a different way. It just puts a different lens on it.
It doesn't hit you over the head. It's exactly right, Cirroc. Couldn't have put it better. It makes it palatable for people who don't necessarily want to taste it, but it makes it palatable.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's like the Flintstones vitamins for people that don't like the jagged little pill, right?
Exactly right, Ryan. Exactly.
I don't know if it's exactly. But
yeah, that's exactly what we were saying. You couldn't have said it better, Ryan.
I'll show myself out. No, but it's
no,
true.
But there was a moment here in this. Yeah, there was a moment in this episode where I think you mentioned the rules of acquisition, and your cousin Gayla was trying to explain to you one of the rules, saying, the riskier the reward, the greater the profit.
Yeah.
And you shut him down like, I don't want to hear about that rules of acquisition right now. We've got a bigger problem on our hands, I know I can make a whole lot of money. I know I can sell out all these people, but I'm not going to live with it on my conscience that I took all these people out. I'm not going to do it. So I will sabotage the whole thing in my own Quark type of way, set these people up to meet each other, but for the greater good, right? For the greater good of humanity. And so that's one thing that I think is so redeeming about Quark and who he is. He just surprises you at every turn and takes a high road when given the opportunity sometimes.
Well, your analogy, if we can put it to modern day things, if the rules of acquisition are the Bible for the Ferengi, often Bible quoting people will know that there's a passage in the Bible that says one thing, but for the greater good, Cirroc, as you just said, they oppose that, knowing full well that, okay, the Bible may say that, but for the greater good, for what's best for my neighbor, my fellow American or a fellow whatever, it's better to do this and to accept that there may be passages in the Bible that are prejudicial, but it's better to not take a prejudicial position.
Yeah, for the greater good.
For the greater good.
And the one note that I also wanted to say, there was a great scene there between Sisko and you at the end, where basically Sisko is letting you get off the hook with everything as long as you pay for the damages that were caused. And you said something to the effect of payment plan, like maybe we should look at a payment plan. And I love Sisko's reaction. It works for me. That's like, I'm good with it. So
it's funny.
I just love that. Was another moment. It was kind of special right there.
Yeah, I thought Sisko was going to go in a different direction with that, but it was funny when he did do that. But anyway, sorry, what were you saying, Armin?
Well, only that, again, we talked earlier about characters going different ways. Yes, you would expect Sisko to be a little bit harder and rougher, but perhaps seeing the little bit of humanity in Quark, he wants to reward that and not squash it. Right. Very smart of the writers to do that, and again, to stay away from the dilemma of making a major adversarial relationship between Quark and Sisko.
Yeah.
Really quick, Ryan, I wanted to slide this question in. Armin, we just reviewed an episode of Lower Decks in which they showed an animated version of Quark's bar in the episode. And now this is the second Quark's bar that we've seen referenced in Star Trek post Deep Space Nine. And I just wanted your thoughts on the homage and what it means to you.
Well, as we said earlier, it means no residuals, that's for sure. But it is nice that Quark is being remembered, and the homages indicate that Quark has done well post DS9, that he has been able to franchise his bar and create a series of bars around the universe. So I'm glad for that. I'm hoping that someday, like we talked about Gala just now, someday after mentioning Quark enough times, they'll put me back into makeup and ask me to do an appearance. Right now, there's no reason to think that'll happen because I'm getting older, folks, and then I can only wear that makeup for so long. But I'm grateful for that. It means what we're saying here, and I'm rather egotistical about it, that Quark made a difference, that he appealed to people, and making that homage is valuable to writers of other series. I'm grateful, very grateful, and flattered, very flattered.
Quark wasn't just remembered; he's being celebrated in these new Star Trek series, and the good news beyond that, Armin, is in Lower Decks. This is an animated series, so no makeup necessary. You can do it in your PJs.
Yeah, I could. I hope somebody picks up on that. Yeah, I could.
I think people would be very happy seeing Quark back. They've already had a Ferengi in Lower Decks, and he kind of did the old switcheroo that they did with the Ferengi from Next Generation to Deep Space Nine, which was when he first showed up, he was kind of like this violent and aggressive thing that was trying to scare one of the characters, like, I'm going to get you, or kind of like a boogeyman kind of thing. But then afterwards, when the character has the switch, he's talking to the main character, and he's perfectly normal and elegant. He's like, oh, so did it work? Did I fool him? And she's like, oh, yeah, perfect. You nailed it. Thank you so much. He's like, oh, great. I'm going to get back to my book now, or something like that, which showed that the Ferengi had so much more depth, but they had kind of like that stereotype of just being like these aggressive, commerce types.
But isn't that true of any
yes,
group of people? We assume that a group of people are a certain way because either the media tells us, or the culture tells us, or our grandparents tell us, and we're surprised when we get to meet individuals that they usually don't have anything to do with that stereotype. Again, that's one of the canards that's all of Star Trek is always trying to debunk, that individuals are never like what the universal stereotype of that individual's group is.
Mm-hmm. And we just covered that. We just covered that in the Lower Decks episode too, right, Cirroc? They're doing a great job. Star Trek just keeps doing it. Yeah.
And that's a Gene Roddenberry production, right? That's a Eugene Roddenberry production, Lower Decks.
Yeah.
So
and Mike McMahon.
So all of them are keeping Gene Roddenberry's vision afloat.
That's the idea behind what we're doing here with keeping Aron Eisenberg's vision afloat. So we're all doing our part to keep things afloat. And on that note, I want to give a proper shout out to the writers of this episode, Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, who actually were story editors on our show for 40 different episodes, including the final episode of What You Leave Behind.
Nice.
And this was one of a couple of episodes that they had written, about 10 episodes that they had written. But just a little shout out to the two of them because they've continued on and wrote for Battlestar Galactic and other shows that we've seen like CSI. So Falling Skies as well. So these guys are in the business doing well, and I just wanted to make sure they got their homage for their writing of this episode, Business as Usual.
Yeah. And I didn't know about Falling Skies, but that was starring our good friend, Mr. Doug Jones, by the way. Shout out to him. What were you going to say, Armin?
Yep.
Nothing, only that I'm very glad to hear that the writers on our show have moved on to other things, and They're very talented. There was an incredible, talented group of people in that writers' room, and I'm very glad that story editors are able to sell shows, especially this one, which was very important to me, to Ira and to Rick, and get them produced. And
Great.
they should have been very happy with Sid's direction, because he did an exceptionally good job.
Love that guy. Great. Well, we're just about out of time here. Didn't really have a nitpick. We usually like to throw out a nitpick. I like to show off my Captain Picard tie for the nitpick of the day. But I didn't really find one today, so maybe we'll think of one for the free-for-all. We do want to give a very special thanks to Carmen Shamwell, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey, Bill Victor Arucan.
Arucan.
There it is. Yvette Blackmon, Homer Frizzell, Eve England out in Wales, and Marie Segal, MD. Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, Susan V. Gruner, MD. John Mann, Mark Rocco, and Darlena Marie. And a huge thank you to Mr. Armin Shimerman for being so cool for 7 years on Deep Space Nine, as well as on Next Generation, and for keeping the peace on specific episodes, just to save the day for us all.
And being just a wonderful man all around.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Armin.
And vice versa.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. Stick around, everybody, for the free-for-all. We'll be right back. Always remember the 7th rule. Everybody, and welcome to the 7th rule. This is the free-for-all, everybody. Armin has decided to stick around with us and have some more fun, and we really appreciate him for that. Thank you, Armin.
You're welcome.
We also have, of course, Mrs. Cirroc Lofton. We have Timothy Baum. We have Melissa Longo. Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy.
Hello.
There he is. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, and Dr. Anne-Marie Segal. So real quick, you guys, we're talking about Business as Usual, which was directed by Alexander Siddig, but Anne-Marie pointed something out a couple days ago. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 2 episodes from now, Armin, you are going to be doing another
Ferengi Love Songs.
Yeah, Ferengi Love Songs, which was directed by Renee. And we were wondering if you could just give us a couple thoughts on how Renee was as a director.
It's where you find out about movies.
Renee as a director, he was fine. He was fine. He knew what he was doing. He has all of his shots down. He was a little bit out of his depth, as all actor directors are, who don't do it constantly. But he was fun to work with. It was always strange when he was my boss. I was always a little out of joint, just a little. No, he was a pleasure to work with, and we all miss him.
Tremendously. What were you saying, Anne-Marie?
Oh, just that's the episode where we find out Moogie. Oh, I don't know if Cirroc knows.
Oh yeah, no spoilers.
Oh yeah, that Moogie is dating the Grand Niggas.
Yeah. So,
Moogie was always a wheeler dealer.
Anne-Marie, you also, before we open this up a bit more, but Anne-Marie, you also mentioned one of the characters, I forgot his name, but was played by a pretty well-known actor, Lawrence Tierney. Oh yeah, the Regent.
Whoa.
What do you know about him? Because as soon as he popped on screen, I was like, this guy has got to be somebody. You can tell they cast the guy on reputation.
Is that for me?
Well, it's for Anne-Marie, but she seems to be speechless.
No, Anne-Marie, you answer first, and then I will.
I'm starstruck.
Tell you. Go ahead, Anne-Marie. No, go ahead, Anne-Marie. Ladies first.
He's been like movies since the 1940s, oftentimes as like a mobster, like a tough guy. And one of the fun things is that he was actually in a TNG episode where like it's a holodeck episode, like one of the really early like season 1 ones, The Big Goodbye. And he's like, I think Cyrus Redblock, who disappears when he leaves the holodeck. But it's like one of the Dixon Hill episodes where Picard is like a 1940s private eye and wears his trench coat. So it's fun that they like brought him back not just as a holodeck program in this episode.
So I remember him vividly. Cirroc, were you there that day? Were you there the day that he worked? I don't think you can ever forget.
No, I'm looking at his resume now because I wasn't there when he worked, and I'm seeing that he's in all these movies, these old movies. Yeah.
This was when Sadig proved his merit, proved what a great human being and person he was. For Ryan and Cirroc, who listened to my last half hour, I talked about divas. Mr. Tierney was not only played tough guys, but he also spent some time in lockup as well, in prison. And he was a tough guy. And he did not want to be on this show. I don't know why he took the job. He didn't have any of the lines memorized. And when we did the scene between he and I, they had to feed him his lines, every word. Sid would feed him a couple words at a time. He would say, not a sentence, he would say a couple words. They would tape that, cut, give him the next couple words. They tape that. We must have spent 3 to 4 hours piecemealing his performance together. And when I watch the episode, you can't see any of that. You get no sense of that. Sadig did an exceptional job that day. He kept him from exploding. This man had a huge temper. And he kept him low key. They had also hired for the day his nephew to keep him low key, but I think it was Sadig more than anyone who Sadig just kept him focused and kept him on the line and assured him we would get through this. And after 3 or 4 hours, we did. It is one of the most memorable days that I had on the show.
Wow.
Now, not for a good day, but that Sadig was incredibly human and kind and direct and focused, and he didn't need this as a fledgling director.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's like how Melissa keeps TJ from blowing up all the time, because he is a the volcano.
It's because of all the rainbows and the glitter.
So he's an older actor at this point, right? He's in his 70s?
He's older, and it's not only that he doesn't want to know the lines. I think at that point, mentally, he couldn't remember the lines. That happens in old age. Right. I know. And he just couldn't remember. And he was frustrated that he couldn't get remembered. And the more that he couldn't remember, the angrier he got. And he took it out on everybody. And Sadig just calmed him down. And assured him that we would do this way. He wouldn't have to worry. All he had to do was repeat 3 or 4 words, and that would be fine. And we got through, I think it was a 3-page scene, maybe 4 pages, just piecemeal, bit by bit by bit by bit. It was like water dripping, one drop at a time.
Yeah, he was born in 1919.
What's that?
He was born in 1919.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a couple years older than I am. Yeah.
A couple. Okay. So, guys, if you have any questions about the episodes or thoughts or observations, or if you want to pick Armin's brain about something, feel free. Because Anne-Marie looks like she's got questions, but we've already, Anne-Marie, we've already gotten your question.
Quark's my favorite. We have like a Quark action figure on our entertainment center, like when I was growing up. We love Quark in our house.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Do you feed me? Do you feed me regularly? I hope
water him.
I should be a piggy bank. Put latinum inside
Yeah, to turn on the TV, some slips of latinum.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you. Very kind. Thank you.
I seriously want to do that. You know how in the Ferengi house there's a bank at the door for people to pay to come in the house. I'm going to get one of those.
You have to share with me, TJ. You have to share it with me.
Yeah.
So for every dollar you stick in, I will give you a dime, and you can give me the rest.
That's licensing right there.
Hey, 30-70.
90-10. Yeah, absolutely. That's fair.
All right, 20-80, and I won't go lower.
So what kind of tender do you accept, TJ? Is it just money? Do you accept action figures and goodies?
Well, you said tenders, so I'm going to say chicken tenders.
Chicken tenders.
No, I had a question about
cauliflower chicken tenders.
I don't think we touched on at all. Armin, in this episode, you had a scene with Dax that I thought was really special.
At the end.
Because the two of you at the end are kind of playing, what is that? Not Jabba, but
Tonga.
Jabba, right?
Tonga.
Yeah. And I just liked the moment because it was a moment where she's like, no, you're like, that's mine. You're like, no, you gave it to me. I'm keeping it. And there's this friendship that you've kind of carried on throughout the show where your end point is her playing this game. The two of you both played this game that you have at your casino.
Yeah, well, you know, Cirroc, that any day that you got to work with Terry Farrell was a good day. So she was always a party girl. She is what she is. When you meet Terry, you meet Terry. There's no facade there. That is that. So she was a joy to work with, and I always wanted. I'm letting something out of the bag that I shouldn't, but I always wanted there to be a relationship between Quark and more than just Tongo.
Quark
and he wanted the Tongo.
So
that would have been so
I was doing all my best to show that in dailies, so that maybe some writer would pick up on that. But
I kind of sensed that. I sensed it a little bit. There is that chemistry there, but they went the other way with Worf, obviously. But
yeah, somebody taller and deeper voice than I am.
Yeah,
what was his line? She's friends with the Ferengi.
Yeah.
But Michael never said Ferengi. He never said Ferengi. It was always Ferengi. And I kept saying, we're not Ferengi, we're Ferengi.
And I'll prove it.
I know how to pronounce it.
Wow. No, that would have been really cool to see a Dax and
wouldn't it? Yeah, I think so.
Always rooting for that couple.
Really?
Well, thank you. It never happened, but maybe it was better they were just friends.
Mochi's butt.
Yes, always. This is Mochi.
She always needs to have the camera on her, and she likes to present her butt to Malissa. So,
yes.
Knows her good side. She knows her good side.
Yeah.
That's her good side.
So, Tim, have you watched this episode recently? And if so, do you have any thoughts on this?
I actually watched the first half of it today.
Oh.
Didn't get to the second half. I had forgotten the storyline about Jake being a babysitter at the very beginning. But yeah, unfortunately, I only made it halfway through before I had to take another meeting. But I remember the old actor and seeing him in old stuff, and then seeing him again, realizing, oh, he's still alive. But no, I did enjoy the first half. I wish I could have made it all the way through. I've seen it before, but not recently.
Right. We appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us here, though, for sure. Malissa, do you have any thoughts on this episode? I don't know if you watched it recently.
Yeah, I watched it last night, and it was fun having Quark find his humanity in a way. Find his conscience. I always like to see that. He puts on this tough Ferengi act, but he's a big softie too. Moogie had more influence on just Rom.
I will never admit to that, Melissa.
Yeah.
There was that one moment in the episode where the lady was giving the companion lady was giving Quark Umox, and he says, "Don't stop until you see smoke."
Yeah. I like that one. I like that. I wrote that down too. Don't stop until you see smoke.
It's like this is for the free for all portion when the kids have gone to bed.
I really, really loved I think the writers do such an amazing job sort of drawing from obviously like actual history. And I love how Bajor comes back by saying that drug lord is welcome on the station, or the warlord is welcome on the station because he supplied weapons to Bajor during the occupation. And that reminds me so much of like sort of like, post World War II events, especially in the Middle East. And I love how they bring that back, and it's so true to life. Like, of course you feel loyalty to who helped you like free yourself from the oppressor. And I just think Deep Space Nine does such a beautiful job of like capturing those little moments where actually, if it didn't happen in real life, you might not believe that's how people would react. And it's a good reminder.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you must know, the inspiration for Deep Space Nine, there were many inspirations, but certainly one of the primary ones was the Serbian-Croatian War that had happened right before the show was conceived. And that certainly has echoes in this episode as well, about people selling arms to both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And Marie's Croatian herself, right?
A quarter, but now I have a citizenship there too, on my mom's side.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I thought you were more Croatian because you're always talking about being a Croatian citizen.
Oh, because I just got citizenship. I just got citizenship because my mom's
that's
Irish too, and I'm Jewish.
That's great.
That'll do it. This is a silly question, but it's one that people ask me oftentimes, and I just want to throw it by you. And you order a double snail juice, extra smooth, in this episode.
So gross.
And I just want to know what was the actual drink. I know people ask this to me all the time.
Oh yeah.
What was the actual drink? Do you remember? Was it applesauce or?
It wasn't prune juice. That was reserved for Casey. I don't remember, Cirroc.
Okay.
I don't remember. It had to be something that could get through my teeth, though. I remember that. I don't remember the drink. I didn't drink very often on the show because it was almost impossible to get the liquid past the false teeth. I think on some occasions, I think I drank through a straw. Maybe this was one of them. I don't know.
Yeah, because Cirroc, you're always talking about like the Jumja sticks were like pure gelatin or something like that, right?
Yeah, those little lollipop things that they would make us lick, and they were just gelatin blobs. They were not flavored or anything. You just pretend to lick it. It's really kind of nasty. So yeah, some of this stuff is horrible.
You
but usually
you enjoy it.
Yeah, but usually our prop guys, we're really good about saying, "Hey, I'm going to put this in your drink, and do you like this or do you want something else?" They were very good about talking to us beforehand and letting us know what it was.
Well, you said the jambalaya was the real thing, right?
Yeah, the jambalaya was the real thing. And speaking of that, there was also another part in this episode where you are presenting all of this food. And that's where you say the Palomarian sea urchin, Metopia rock fungi, or Wentleyan conker snake. And those were nomenclatures, by the way, that we missed in the review. But those are some of the nomenclatures.
You're right. I got them all too. Yeah. I got them here in my notes.
I think the writers were being ugly to me that week. How can we make Armin really uncomfortable?
I barely read it off the paper, and I wrote it with my writing, and I'm like, Polymerian sea urchin. I'm like, gosh, if I had to remember that, it would have been there a long time. Sid would have had to take his time with me, and we would have done 2 words at a time. What the Lawrence Tierney treatment right there.
2 syllables at a time.
2 syllables, yeah. These are hard words. Metopia rock fungi. Yeah.
Max had a scene once. Come over and say hello.
I don't have any makeup on and I'm in my sweaty workout clothes.
What do you want?
Well, I'll do it. Hi, guys. I'm in my
Hi. Can't see you anymore.
Oh, good. Hi. I'm just getting stamps so I can send postcards to voters.
Oh, cool.
Well, you're perfectly blurred in the background, so it's great to see you in a blurry way.
To hear your voice.
Hi, guys.
Kitty, ladies and gentlemen.
Max, in one episode, had to eat something that none of us wanted to eat, and the director had to decide who was going to eat it, and Max said, "Oh, I'll eat it," and I watched him and thought, "Oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that." So Cirroc, the prop guys never asked me if I wanted something in the drink or not. I think maybe your age had something to do with it, that they wanted to make sure that they weren't killing a teenager off, that's all.
Yeah, I actually got an option a few times, I can remember getting asked, do you want this or that? So at least they were nice. Maybe because they knew I was going to spit it out right on camera. What the hell is this? I'm not going to keep going through the scene. We're going to have to figure this out.
But now, hang on. It seems like we buried the lead here. Cirroc, I had no idea. Yeah. Did you know that Armin could do such a good Rom impression?
Oh, yeah. He's very good. He's very good. He gives it to you in spurts. You got to get it like 2 words at a time, but he's great at it.
Exactly. If I hadn't played Quark, I would have played Rom. So I had to have some background for that. So.
Now, Homer, if you're listening in, Homer, everybody he's outside walking around, gallivanting in Upper Manhattan or somewhere around there in New York.
Yeah, I'm on Cabrini.
Cabrini, yeah, that's where the apartment building is, right there on Cabrini, yeah.
Huh. Yes, so, what is your question, Ryan? I am ready.
Oh my God. I'm watching in the background. I had a dear friend who lived in that apartment, so I've been there many times.
I'm going to spotlight it.
Behind you is very nostalgic.
Yeah, I'm just almost at 181st Street.
Wow.
That's the intersection coming up.
It's beautiful.
And it's warm.
So you've probably watched this episode recently, Homer. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I do. And I'm blanking on the name of the actor, but he played the warlord. And I was like, this guy is familiar. And he has been in lots and lots of stuff and has 4 or 5 things that are in production now. He was the villain in a James Bond film, Octopussy, and he's prolific. Anyway, I was just wondering how it was working with him. You guys had a lot of scenes together.
Yeah, I waxed poetic in the last episode about that, Homer.
Okay.
I will answer it very quickly. He was a handful, but he's also a phenomenal actor. So working with him, the actual on-camera stuff was wonderful. It was the off-camera backstage. It wasn't bad. He was just he was an explosive that could go off at any moment. So off-camera, I was aware of that. On camera, it was a joy to work with such a phenomenal actor. When another actor gives you tons of stuff to work off of, to bounce off of, it's a reward. And that's what Stephen was giving me. He was giving tons of stuff to work with.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, it seemed like the role that he had would be similar to, you don't know when the guy is going to go off, and part of his character was about don't cross him. So it definitely fit with what he was doing.
Yeah, he's both famous and infamous at the same time. Stephen Bochco. Not Stephen Bochco. Stephen
Burkoff.
Stephen Bochco is a producer. Sorry.
Yeah, he is.
Thank you.
Right. Well, anybody else? We've just got a few minutes left before we go. Anybody have any final thoughts on this episode? And Homer, thanks for joining us, midway through your walk through New York and for giving Armin a little something to look at.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you, here's the intersection, 181st and Cabrini.
I know it well. I know it well. Thank you, Homer. I spent a lot of time on that corner.
Thank you. I'm gonna mute and hide myself now.
All right. So yeah, before we go, any other final thoughts?
So I'll go. And first of all, so Quark is looking at me like that because Jadzia is whispering sweet nothings into this ear.
Lucky you, TJ. Lucky you.
But what I really want to say, and even in that picture, is like in this episode and so many others that Armin, you take us, on this journey. Somebody mentioned, this journey of where you kind of find your humanity. So that it's an emotional journey, and we can see that in your performance, even through the makeup. I mean, just look at your expression on the screen behind me here, which isn't actually, disdain at Jadzia's affection for me, but
yeah, it is.
We can, really, really, really see, what the character is going through, and kind of sympathize with. It started off great. I want to make some money, and no one's really getting hurt. To oh my God, we're going to kill millions of people, and I need to do something about that. Like, it's a decision point, in life. Am I going to become this person that can just kind of gloss over that and it's okay because I'm going to be filthy rich, so who cares? Or, I'm a person that is going to say, no, that's wrong. And so we get to watch your character grapple with that, and we can absolutely feel it and sympathize with it because of such a good performance.
Thank you, TJ. As I said earlier in another segment, it was a blessing to have this script because of just the things you just said. The moral question, the decision that had to be made, those are wonderful things for an actor to play. And I was blessed to have the script for that reason. And there were a lot of choices that the character had to make. And the thing about performance, for those of you who are actors who have ever thought about being actors, most of what you communicate comes from the windows of the soul, the eyes. And thankfully, that and my chin were the two things that weren't covered up. So, I had to, as Aron had to, as Max, as Michael Dorn had to. We all had to communicate, as Renee had to. We all had to communicate through our eyes because we didn't have the facial things that we normally did. Now, the great thing about my makeup was it could do some stuff. It could. And I'm grateful for that. But most of it had to come from the eyes or from the specifics that came through the way you said words.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And that's another thing that, by the way, Armin, that stood out to me watching this episode. So your cousin Gayla is also wearing this, he's wearing the garb, he's got the headdress, he's got the headpiece, he's got the full mask, the Ferengi. But there was clearly something more about Quark. As I was watching it, it's like, oh, Quark is special. I mean, I know he's a Ferengi like the Ferengi, but looking at him and your personality overshines and overtakes all of that stuff that weighs you down. And watching Gayla, he kind of gets a little bit mixed and lost in it. He's not able to overshine and come across as hard as you do.
Well, Cirroc, thank you for that. But you especially must know this. It is very difficult for a guest actor to show up on a set.
Oh yeah,
and be as fully fledged out as someone who's done it a lot of times. That's impossible for any guest actor to hope to be that. And this was the 5th year, so at this point I'm pretty comfortable in Quark, and he has to move 10 times as fast to keep up with me. And of course, because as it must have happened for you, as it must have happened for Aron, as it must have happened for everybody who showed up a lot on any show. You feel at home. It's comfortable. It's not a job. It's your home, and you act as if you're home. And you can be freer. You can be more open. You can take risks. You can do foolish things. You can do heroic things because it's your home. It's comfortable. It's a safe place. For people who are guest stars, it's an incredible hurdle to leap because they have to be just as comfortable as the guy who's been there for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's some actors that we've seen shockingly somehow show up on that day and they act like they've been there for 5 years too. And those are the ones and the performances that really stand out when it's a one-off character and they just own the place. You know, like we mentioned, I always forget the actor's name in Duet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done it.
Yeah.
There's usually
Tony
two
Todd.
or three.
Tony Todd has done it.
Tony Todd's
Yeah.
one, yeah.
I'd say Wallace Shawn from day one.
Yes, yes, but all of those guys that you just mentioned, and oh my God, the guy who was in Duet was there the moment I met Kitty. Harris Yulin. Harris Yulin,
yeah.
Harris Yulin. Harris and I were talking when Kitty walked into the bar. Harris and all those people you mentioned, because they have a backload of work where they're confident of themselves, of their work, and they can bring themselves to their characters. That's what makes them riveting, because they have learned that they are riveting, and so therefore they can be riveting because they are, and they know it.
I thought maybe Cousin Gala was related to Quark through Keldar and not Moogie, so he wasn't as domineering.
That could be. It could be. You're the doctor. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Nerd alert. Right now, Homer is looking at you very judgingly right now.
How did you know? My screen's not on.
Yeah, that's how we know.
Yeah, that's how we know.
Look at his face. He's just like
The shaking of the head.
He just shake his head.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time here, guys. But thank you all very much for joining us. And Armin, we love having you, and we love you, and you're so much fun, and you're so insightful, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ryan. It's always a pleasure to be here. Let's do it again.
Okay. See you next week.
Yeah.
No, but we appreciate you very much. We do want to say also thank you very much to TJ for joining us, Timothy, Melissa, Anne Marie, MD, and Homer Freezy somewhere out in New Yeezy.
181st Street.
For everybody that had a pool at home.
Homer, is the liquor store still on the corner there at Cabrini?
That's a good question. There's an Irish pub here on this corner. This is the northeast corner.
How far are you from the subway stop? Then I'll know exactly where you are.
Oh, I'm about 2 blocks. Maybe 2 blocks
okay.
east of here. Yeah.
So if you go down one block from, if you go downhill half a block or a whole block from the subway stop, that's where the liquor store is.
Gotcha. I will look, because I'm going to go to the subway after this.
You had me at Irish Pub. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, this is where Dungeons and Dragons is going to happen tonight.
Nice.
I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Gaelic.
Cousin Gaelic.
Cousin Gaelic.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Ouch.
My bad. Is this thing still on? Whoops.
Unfortunately.
Anyway. All right. On that note, time to run. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon, everybody. Always remember the 7th rule.